Or go to Tselem in the garden. So Genesis 2. I'll read this one, but you can turn there if you'd like. Then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living creature. And the Lord God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Relatively well-known passage. Relatively. By some. And by some, I mean like there's a lot of things we kind of assume that we know, but we don't really take the time to read it. I say that as a person who's done that for years. So some ancient Near Eastern context. This comes a lot from Catherine McDowell. In fact, her entire work is based on this whole chapter. Great, hard read, but great read. By hard, I mean it's a doctoral dissertation, so it's written as if you know how to read PhD papers, which I didn't for a while, and then I had to learn too. So after the image was created, it had to be brought to life. So this is before she's argued how the next bit of things we're going to talk about ties to this passage here. We're already coming to the backdrop that humanity is in this image, in the likeness. And she's now talking about how in other cultures, when they make their images, what they have to go through is a brought to life ceremony of sorts, or ritual. And so they have to go through these rituals and dressings and adorning with proper insignia that was installed in his temple and fed its first meal before it could be effective. They did a lot of weird ritual stuff to it, which is called the washing or the opening of the mouth, depending on which culture you're looking at. I think just by that language alone, I think we're starting to already maybe see some of the interesting things in comparison. So these rituals were performed not only on a divine statue, but also on a king and his royal insignia, royal statues, priests, individual humans, and various animals that were viewed as sacred. And by contrast, the mouth opening rite was apparently reserved for inanimate objects, including figurines and large divine images, a leather bag, cult symbols, and royal jewelry. So all these charts that I have for you guys here is her comparing these different rituals to that of Genesis 2. Specifically, Genesis 2:5 to Genesis 2:34. I kind of, to keep it simpler, focus on 7 and 8 in our opening verse, because you hear mouth opening and mouth washing ritual, and God breathes into his images. And so I think we already can see there's some interesting parallels here just in the background of the language that he's constructing a statue right now, but a living statue. And he's purifying it. He's making it holy because it's going to be in sacred space. He makes the image, then he makes a sacred space, Eden, and puts them in that sacred space. So we'll skip to the ones that are more like where it ties directly to Genesis 2. If you want to read the other ones, you're welcome to read those another time. But if we skip down to temple workshop, which is in the first image, she mentions that these images are cleansed and purified workshop, offerings made, image addressed, receives first offering. And then from Babylon, they would have the 2 holy water vessels set up, offerings made, mouth washing, incantation. You have another culture where they would outline a statue divinely revealed to priests. Priests ask sculptors to make the statue. Sculptors hold the statue. But then you have the Bible, Yahweh Elohim forms the man from dust of the ground, animated him with breath of life, sensory organs, limbs, and animation. So we have this making of a statue. You're in your workshop in the temple, and then you purify them. You sculpt the statue, you hoe it, you wash it, you cleanse it, you purify it. Well, God does that in one quick swoop with Adam in the garden. Again, you can read some more of the extra stuff to do for the other procedures if you want to be a major nerd. I included that for you. Or you can read her book if you want to become super nerd. I will not bore you with those details. We'll just go again to the next relevant section. The image seated on a mat amidst reed huts and standards. This is in the third picture. First column, images seated on mat amidst reed huts and standard. This is for Nineveh. Set eyes towards sunrise, craftsman equipment laid down, offerings made. Babylon, image would be seated on a mat amidst reed huts and standards. Set eyes towards sunrise, offerings made. Priest draws water for 7 holy water basins and puts them in the Kusu temple. Priest prepares holy water basin of mouthwashing. Priests fill the trough and place it on the brick. And then they would have a mouthwashing procedure, etc., etc. Another culture, opening of mouth and eye with sacrificed animals, a curved blade, iron blades, statue presented and declared complete. So statues are finished, then they point it somewhere and they begin to craft stuff for it to go into its proper domain. Yahweh plants a garden, which is going to be the sacred space. We've gone from cosmic discussion to a localized discussion, which I think is interesting. You then get into the next section with the garden, or day 2 for some of these rituals. They will set up 3 thrones, 3 tables for Ea, Shamash, and Asuluj. Make offerings, craftsmen, deities mentioned. Priests recites incantations, etc., etc. A lot of other things take place. Again, for Babylon, they would set up the 3 thrones and tables. Priests recite a certain incantation. Priests perform mouth-washing incantation, etc., etc. Open the mouth and eyes with blade and finger, little finger, offering a bull foreleg. We're going to now they're being made holy. They're being made more into the likeness or the idea of royalty. Adam and Eve crowned. She puts a question mark there because there's no passage that says they're crowned, but you have the very fact that Genesis 1 talks about how because you're the image, your prerogative is to go out and rule. Well, that means they have to be crowned in some sense. So they're getting that royal connection to an image because images were done royally and divinely. Skipping to the 4th picture, down towards the bottom for procession from temple gate to Holy of Holies. For Babylon, a statue seated and fed, offerings made to Ea and Asaluj. Priests performs mouth-washing, statue purified, additional garments of insignia given. Other cultures, clothing and adorning of statue fed, statue transported to garden shrine and installed. Bible, Yahweh Elohim provides food for the man and the woman. Yahweh Elohim installs the man in the garden, aka the garden temple. So we've established that God has made his statues. He's made them holy. He crowned them with the fact that they're going to rule. He then makes his temple. He puts them in the temple and to provide them with the food so they can be fed as a living statue. And now they're into sacred space. It was this whole ritual they would do where they would have to, because they're treating it as this representative, they would do these rituals that would clean it up, almost like they're breathing into it, feed it, do these prayers and bowing down, incantations, all these different rituals that go into the idea because the mouth would be viewed as the way that the gods would go through to be instilled in their statue. Because again, they weren't dumb enough to think that the statue was God, but it was a vessel that the gods could come in if they wanted to be in the presence of human beings, because they were always up there. So the mouth washing is a set of rituals because this is the place that they would often go through and then embody the statue, even though the statue didn't move. But they would be there and then they would bow to it, they would worship it and do all these things. And then the last image, Babylon, purifications rituals were performed. And then Genesis 2, eyes of Adam and Eve opened, became like Elohim, realization of nakedness, clothing, crown removed. But then they were uninstalled from garden temple. So where they go wrong is the fact that they become like Elohim, like all of them, in a way that they were not supposed to just yet. They took on, it's almost like that they took on the rest of that ritual for themselves, rather than letting God finish the ritual in them, in this idea of the mouth cleansing. They weren't fully ready yet to take on this next bit in their life, but they took it for themselves. They decided, we'll be God and finish this procedure, at least in the way that McDowell is kind of outlining the possibility of how this could be looked at. I think it's fascinating. I think there's too many parallels to say it's not there, but you don't want to say that God also didn't finish his job. So I understand why we don't want to maybe jump to that conclusion, but also there are things that God withheld from them that it seemed like that he might have given to them later. So you could argue, again, that they're supposed to do this. They're supposed to receive this final component and then nah, we'll do it ourselves. Which is the problem, the potential problem you have when you have a living statue rather than just a statue that can't do anything and it can't go against you. It just sits there. It can't do anything wrong. It just sits there. Whereas humans, the very fact that they have ability to choose something means that they can and probably will do something wrong. But that's a brief Thinking about the Genesis 2, parallels between the creation of Adam, who was placed in the garden, sacred space, and other ceremonial rituals for the construction of idols are fascinating in that it demonstrates further to the intention of humanity that we are created for sacred space and to represent, have a close relationship with him in making all space sacred space. And we done screwed up. And so this next section in your notes, as I mentioned before in the past, and we've went over Genesis 5 and 9, all of these are kind of showing the different ways that they've used Tselem, the way they were supposed to destroy statues of pagans, or how the image is still intact, or how you have like kings who make ones and they're like bowing to it, or you're like Daniel, who's like, Daniel and his friends are like, no, that's dumb. Why would we do that? And so they just move on. So you can go through that whole list if you want. I would more recommend actually reading those passages. I just probably very, very brief commentary, like here's what this verse is about. But if you actually want to check that out, there's some interesting stuff there. Just to see that Tselem is not, it kind of struck some people I met as odd that the idea of idol was put on humans because we immediately associate idol with the bad things. So the fact that it says that God made his own idols and they're us was like, what? What? And so that is to show, hey, Josh isn't crazy. This word means idol in almost every other place in statue.